parched, a little bit dry, nary a rain cloud in the sky. And if you're thirsty for some brain hydration, Moyst Gary is here to give you an education. That sounded better in my head.
We really should go camping sometime. Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Today we're going to be talking about, well, I want to say mid-sized, but there's some debate on how big it actually was. A sized sauropod from sort of the southern part of Utah. This animal here behind me is named Moabosaurus, found in Moab. And it would have been living at the same time as the much more well-known Utahraptor. Their contemporaries both found in the Dalton Wells quarry. Now, Moabosaurus here is debated to be a member of the Turriosaur sauropod family. The Turriosaurs being really strange, that's all I can say. I recommend reading into it yourself. My brain kind of glazes over whenever I start looking into it. Interestingly though, one of the, as of the time of recording, newest announced dinosaurs, Oceanotitan, is likely related to Moabosaurus. Now, at least this mount of Moabosaurus I enjoy because it's right across from our mammoth. And whereas the Columbian mammoth, being one of the largest, rivals the mid-sized sauropods in size. These animals were truly massive. Now, there's a lot of debate, like I mentioned at the beginning, about whether this individual would be an adult or not. And it mainly depends on which scientists you talk to. The controversy, or I guess the unclarity, lack of clarity, comes from the fact that while we have about 8 individuals of Moabosaurus, all of the bones seem to have died in some sort of game trail for sauropods and other large dinosaurs. So while we have tons of bones, they were all stomped on and smashed into oblivion. There were even beetles drilling, or not drilling, but burrowing holes through the bones of these animals. You can especially see with this one what areas they had to sculpt and what areas were based on original material. Whereas something like this coracoid, you might need to bring the camera in a bit to see this. Something like this coracoid has a lot of texture and depth to it, whereas the scapular shoulder blade right above it is very smooth and doesn't have a lot of imperfections. In fact, that's a good rule of thumb in most museums to try to figure out if something is original or cast is how beat up is it. If it's really beat up, there's lots of cracks and divots, it's probably a cast of original material. If it's nice and smooth and pretty, like this just came out of a living animal, it's probably cast material. There are exceptions to that, but that's a good rule of thumb. We'll also be talking about some other animals that are found in the Dalton Wells quarry, along with Moabosaurus. I'll catch you there.
Thank you.
Well, nice to see you made it. We've got Gastonia here, cousin of the much more well-known Ankylosaurus. This is in sort of a cousin family called the Nodosaurs. The Nodosaurs are not technically, like, not a technical way. Generally, the Nodosaurs are small and spiky. Ankylosaurs are big and round. Ankylosaurs also would have had a large club at the end of their tail that Gastonia here does not. Now, this is a decent-sized animal, and with other Nodosaurs like Sauropelta, we have actually gotten a decent idea of what some of the colors of these animals would be. Sort of a reddish-brown on the top with white shoulder spikes, being greatly exaggerated by the keratinous sheath. With Gastonia, well, we might think this guy looks like an impenetrable tank. Utahraptor was likely munching down on him. And while the signs here say no climbing, Utahraptor had no such warning. In fact, the killing claw of Utahraptor could have been used to help dig under and tear these armor plates off. That's one theory. The paper for that hasn't yet been published. But it's some interesting research into some of the morphologic shapes of these raptor claws. It was once thought that all raptors' killing claws, the one that's held up off the ground on their feet, would have been the same from Utahraptor to Deinonychus to Achillobator to Bambiraptor. But it turns out when we take a closer look at their shapes, each species seems to have a specially tailored killing claw to their specific needs. They weren't general purpose tools at all. And while Utahraptors might look like a horrible 15-inch long, well, I actually know how big this is. Let's do some in-the-field measurements here. I'm gonna measure the internal edge because that's, oh crap, if that wants to like catch. Okay, so it's got like 6-inch internal edge. I think they're 15-inch on the external edge. Let's keep. Ooh. See, that's 1 foot on the external edge. Let's go with the bigger numbers so they can be big and flashy. So while this might look like a horrible 12-inch long slashing knife, this might have been more like a giant can opener used to help them get into these armored dinosaur shells. Yeah, actually I think that's it. If we just want to stop filming.